Hey everybody, this is Evan with Tabletop Gaming Guild, and today I am bringing you a review of Churchill, Big Three Struggle for Peace by GMT Games. So this is a very large game from GMT. This is if you play the full scenario, all 10 conferences within the game, you're looking somewhere to 4 to 5 hours with it. You can do the training or the tournament within 2 to 3 hours, so cuts it down. But this is a very large game here for them. I'm going to take you down to the table and show you some stuff with it. Just so you know, going into this is not going to be a full review because this could take multiple hours just to go through a lot of the finer points. Not that it's overly complicated. There's just a lot of little things that go into it, and a lot of things that touch each other throughout the game. So this is going to be almost like a new type of video here for me, almost a down and dirty video. Just super quick basics, kind of what you're looking at with the game. Touch some of the higher points of the game, and then I'll give you my final thoughts. Alright, so here on the table I have the entire board laid out. Not set up or anything, but just kind of laid out to show you the scale of this map. Here, and the conference section over here. Measured out, it's almost 2 foot wide by 3 foot long. So, I mean, it is a very large board. It's broken up in half here, as you can see the half section right there. And then this right half is actually broken up even further. So Churchill is not a war game. So it is about World War II, but it's not a war game. So this half of the board is all the things that happened during World War II. Now you're probably thinking, well, if it's not a war game, why are we talking about World War II? So the game actually is more about what happens on this side of the board. So during World War II, there was 10 conferences between the U.S. President, the British Prime Minister, and Stalin, the leader of the USSR. So in those 10 conferences, they handled various issues. These are the many issues that this game will cover here, but these are the things that they kind of went over and talked about. Anything from political and military issues, directing the offensives, U.S. production, British production, A-bomb research. Throughout many times in the war, there was a lot of talk about the European theater leadership, Pacific leadership, and even the USSR declaring war on Japan, which was a topic there that they talked about quite a bit too. So, as you can see here, this part of the board is set up like a conference table with the 3 leaders here. And all the issues that are up here are going to be debated on between the 3 leaders. And depending on how they go out, they're going to go and be won by the various leaders using cards, which I'll show you the cards and stuff here in a little bit. All the stuff that happens in that first section then corresponds to everything that happens here. You have A-bomb research over here. There's 3 different fronts here for Europe. You got down here all of the Pacific theater here. You can see this theater here. Chinese, Burma, India, Far East, Southwest Pacific, Central Pacific. So you are fighting the war here. But like I said, it is not a war game. So really, the war aspect is, in a nutshell, you're going to be debating these issues, and depending on how these issues and who wins them, they will get to decide how they're going to influence this side. And any combat, any rolling onto this side is one roll will decide that. But beyond that, things just kind of come out and push things along. So, is there war in this game? Yes, but like I said, it isn't technically a war game. So, as you can see, the sprawling camera work I have here to kind of show you some stuff here and how it's all laid out. I wanted to focus on some of this stuff because it is such a big board, it's going to be hard to put everything all into one screen for you. Now, I'm going to talk about a couple quick things here. The board is laid out nicely. Everything is laid perfectly out, so you know where everything is. And they put nice reminder text for everything here, all laid out right onto the board, so it's less to look at and try and find stuff. Some of the charts that you're going to need here is nicely put right onto the board. Alright, so here in the center you can see the conference table here, and like I said, we're going to talk about this side first. Before we go into that, so here into the rulebook, there's actually 3 different scenarios you play. So here's the training scenario. You have the tournament, and then you have the full campaign. So they're all laid out right here into the book. And what's nice is they kind of ramp up the difficulty. So the game can go up to 10 turns or until you meet the victory conditions. So the victory conditions is if you get both the Axis, which is Germany and Japan, to surrender. If you can get both of that to happen before the 10th turn in a full campaign, that'll end it. But beyond that, it's 10 for the full campaign. In the tournament, you actually go 4 turns, but you start with conference 6 to 10, which I'll talk about the conferences here in a little bit. In the training scenario, you start with conference 8 and go to 10. So we're going to talk about the conferences here. That's going to be this deck of cards here. So, as you can see, these are the different conferences that they actually met at and where they met. So the first conference was met in Casablanca, Washington, D.C., and so on and so forth. You can see the number that's going to tell you what conference it was. So that's what I mean by starting at 6 or 8 or starting from the very beginning. So with the conferences, we'll drop it up here. There's going to be a couple of different things that are going to happen, and they affect everybody. So everything's color coded into the game. So green always corresponds to the British player, red always to the USSR, blue to the United States. Any of the gray that refers to kind of anybody. It can be sometimes they're going to be against the U.S. or the U.K. or USSR, or they're going to be something that's going to correspond to something that has to happen or not happen in the theater maps. And then this lower section down here, that is a kind of this is also what's happening through the turn. So if anything happens here, you're going to resolve those things with die. So like in this one's increased partisan activity. So as you can see with that one, you just kind of follow the text. Each player rolls a d6 on 1 to 3, gain 2 candescent networks, which we'll talk about here onto the theater part of the board. So as these conferences happened, the leaders of these countries actually met and debated all those issues, like I said. So, how these work is they're going to actually use cards. These cards represent all the people that actually were in positions of power or influence. And with a nice bit of history here. So they got the name, who they were, and then there's going to be text about what they do here. So each one has its own special abilities here. All the decks are the same size, but each person that's in each deck have different powers, which are not the same. So, like, you're not going to find someone that does exactly this in the UK pile or the US pile. Likewise, the same with them. Now, a couple cool things is located in there. One of the cards that you can use is the leader itself. They're fairly powerful. And you'll see the numbers that are located up here. We'll go over that here in a minute. So at the beginning here, you're going to have all these laid out. I'm not going to pull them out, but you're going to have these laid out, and each of the players will draw 7 cards in their hand. So you'll grab 7 cards. I'll shuffle up real quick and give you kind of a rough idea. So you have 7 cards in your hand. And then also with that, you're always going to have your leader also in your hand. So with the cards I have in my hand, all the other opponents here are going to have likewise same amount of cards. We all take 1 card and we sit and we wait until everyone's set. And once it's set, we reveal what it is. This is where the numbers here in the corner go. So in this first round, it's whoever reveals the highest. So like in this situation, I have a 5. Let's say my USSR opponent revealed a 3 and my UK opponent revealed a 2. So I have the highest. So what I can do is then I can take a conference issue from over here, and I take it from the center of issue, and it slides up to this track. So this track shows how far an issue is debated toward that side, how much that side has controlled the issue. Now, once that goes here, that's it for me. It goes into the UK person. This gets discarded off to the side. It'll get shuffled back into the hand, into the unused cards later, and they'll be cycled through. Now, side note of that, there are cards here in the USSR that actually can let you cull cards out of here so you can slim your deck down. So, since the US was the first player to go, it would be to the person to the left. So, as you can see, it just works around in the circle. The UK will then actually get to pick an issue. And then once they pick an issue, they have to play a card from their hand. And they would use the number to show how far it would go up on their side of their issue. Now, the first one is the only one that cannot be debated. But after that, any issue that is brought out in round order can be debated. What that means is if they play a card for 3 and move it to 3, the USSR or the US player can debate that, play a card out of their hand to move it back toward the center issue or toward their chair. Now, if you debate it, you're going to lose out on cards that you could use to select specific conferences, but if there's a conference issue that you wanted to grab that somebody else grabbed for you that you need to move, you can do that. Another thing you can do is instead of grabbing a new issue, you can take a current tabled issue and move it using these cards. So, like I said, this is the main portion of the game. So you're going to keep doing that repeatedly until all the cards are used. Be careful that once you're out of cards, you can no longer choose issues, move issues, anything like that. So once these issues are settled onto the tracks, they're going to go over to this other side of the map. So I'm going to go and take you to the other side here, and we're going to talk about that. Over here onto this side, this is the military side. Like I said earlier, with all the different theaters of operation that were going on during World War II. So you see these squares here. These are actually, as you can tell, different European countries or Asian countries, Pacific Island countries that existed at the time. And one thing that you're going to do is, based off of the conferences, you're going to get, which actually I'm going to slide the mat just this way, using these political military. So as you can see, political alignment or clandestine networks. So you're going to be using these chits or tokens or markers, whatever you want to call them. You'll be placing them into these based off your color. As I said, everything's always color coded with this game to show who controls what. Basically, you are setting up governments, spy networks within these countries that are aligned towards your country itself. Then you also can get the political, which is more setting up governments for after World War II. You're going to be using these tokens in there. You can only have one clandestine network of yours in one political in any given time. So that's one of the many things that you're going to be fighting over with the conference issues. Another thing that you're going to be doing is these cubes actually represent the armies as they go across. So you're going to see the theaters here. The most common one that people know of here is the Western Theater. So, and it's very, very nicely laid out. So with the Western Theater, you're going to be moving armies as they move across here. The army is represented by a cube itself. The Axis players use these black cubes, and they're going to be stopping you on the various fronts. It all comes down to a basic die roll, but you need to have support in order to move these armies. You can see like 3 naval, 5 naval that they're talking about here. That's actually naval support itself, and that's going to come off of production that you have, that you work off of based off the scenario, how many you're going to have, and off the conference issues also, how many that you're going to have. So with these, you're going to be negotiating with your players, because this is cooperative to a point. You need to win the war between Germany and Japan. You need to negotiate with production, because you're not always going to have enough production your own to fuel these theaters of war. So you need to be able to negotiate to make sure that you get all these productions that you need to move these along, because you need to get to the end here. Anytime your army gets to Japan or Germany, they surrender. There's also a couple other ways that you can make them surrender, which right here, surrender conditions. Like I said, it's nicely laid out here onto the board, so you don't have to go flipping through the rule book to find some of this stuff. So there's a lot of negotiation that you have to do with this, but you're also thinking, well, in games like this, if I'm getting the victory points, sometimes I don't want to negotiate. We're going to talk about the victory conditions here in a little bit. What's really, I think, what makes this game really shine is between the conferences and how they do the final scoring, which is really top notch. But there's a lot of things on here too. They have a little up here for the Pacific and the European. It's almost a little script for how they're going to deploy their armies to slow down the different fronts. And you also keep the A-bomb research track over here too. But really, the big thing is all the things that you do in the conference is going to translate over into here. And it's pretty self-explanatory what you need to do based off of what these conference issues do and how they correspond to the different theaters of command. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring you back up from the table from this down and dirty version of Churchill. Like I said at the beginning, I could probably go on for a good hour or two showing you all the intricacies of how this game works, but I don't want to do a 2-hour video and make you watch that. If I just kind of give you a good rundown of very basic, you can kind of see, is this going to be a game for you? So let's come back up from the table, and I'm going to hit a couple final thoughts for you. All right, my final thoughts here on Churchill. So some of the things I'm going to talk about here before I get into that. So the rule book in here, 36 pages. But of the 36 pages, if you remove everything from the scenarios on, you only have about 17 pages of rules. And they actually don't start the rules until really about page 2, halfway through that. So really about 15 and a half pages, roughly. If you're familiar with GMT's rules, they can be a little dry, almost like reading an instruction or like a tech manual. Not the easiest read in the world, just kind of as a heads up, but they're overall laid out pretty well. What's really nice too is they put a nice index, so if you're looking for something in particular, you have a good quick reference here. As I showed in the video, there are 3 different scenarios in there. A couple solitaire rules, the variant. And then from page 24 and all the way to the very end is a lot of glossaries, examples of play, and then actually history about the game itself. A couple other things that are really nice in here. So it's a really nice player aid. You can run a lot of the game right off this player aid. It is really nice. And then if you do play with less than 3 players, this game does play from 1 to 3. 3 is the most ideal player count because then everyone can play one of the leaders. But if you're short 1 or 2 people, they do have a little AI bot here that you can follow along so you can play the game itself. And I think that's really cool that they put that right into that. Now, if you look at the box, GMT a lot of times onto the back or onto the side, they're going to put their complexity level, and they put this one as a 2. This is not a 2 by any means. This is more of a 6. It is complex, more complex than average, but I don't think by any means is a 2. I would say you would have something like King of Tokyo or something like that. That would be into the 1 or 2 scale. This is a little bit heavier. It's not an 8 or a 9, which can be some of the other GMT game titles. This is kind of mid-range. One that I've done here for the channel is Salerno 43. This would be about in the same complexity. So if you're familiar with something like that, you would be able to get the rules and be able to play this one pretty well. It is big, as I've mentioned multiple times. The board's 2 by 3, so you're going to need a bigger area to play it on. But the board is gorgeous. The chits are really nice quality on them. The cards are fantastic. Great reference to the actual history of what happened there. And as I said before a couple times in here, this is not a war game. So this is more about the conferences that happened. So during that time, the big 3 there, we're trying to decide what is going to happen with the world afterwards. World War II is going to be won, and they pretty well knew that. So we needed to figure out how we're going to, put everything back together. And by vying for the victory points in this game is almost how they were setting themselves up to be in charge of what happened. What's really nice with the game here is you cannot run away with this game. So if you are playing this game with 3 people, if you have more than 15 victory points, then the next closest person, the person in second place actually wins. So that's what forces this game, and I think what really helps this game a lot is it forces that we need to work together, because if I'm starting to run away with this, I'm not going to win. So I need to grab you and pull you along, but in a way that I'm still helping myself. So I think by doing that, it makes this game put another layer of strategy into it. There's actually a couple other different ways that they put victory conditions also, but that's the big one that I wanted to touch on. So I really, if you're into the history of World War II, and you got a couple people that are pretty well into it also, this is a game that I would highly, highly recommend you give a go. It is a little bit long, like I said. Full campaign is 4+ hours, but you're going to really enjoy it. You can talk about the history of the different conferences that are going on. You can talk about the different theaters, things that happened, how you can change some of the history of what happened too. For what they did in this style of game, it blows my mind that they were able to put such a large level concept together, and GMT does a great job doing stuff like that, and I again highly recommend this if you are interested in it. But until later, this is Evan with Tabletop Gaming Guild. Definitely hit that subscribe button. Every subscription that we get helps us out. Hit that like button, hit that little bell to know exactly when our next videos are dropping, and until later, have a good day.